Diablo 4 Season 11's PTR has come and gone, but it wasn't without its controversial changes ranging anywhere from new activities like the tower to complete revamps in itemization, reducing player power significantly by essentially getting rid of masterworking as we know it today. However, this past week, Colin and Zaven, both lead developers on Diablo 4, sat down with some of the top content creators in the space to discuss what's up and coming and what's changing in the PTR, and I've got some exciting news to share. And before we jump in, did you miss out on the StarCraft skins that were available in the Diablo 4 collaboration? Well, figure out how to get all the armor sets, the Hydra Pet, and the mount for free at the end of this video. Let's jump right in. First off, let's talk about the tower. I played the tower personally during the PTR, and it just didn't feel that much different from the pit, and also there were no rewards attached to its completion, which made it seem not very worthwhile to do over the pit, which at least got you items as well as glyph experience. But as a result of PTR feedback, we are to expect a lot of improvements here for Season 11. First off, the tower will now offer unique cosmetic pieces depending on where you place on a leaderboard, and these prizes are in the shape of halos. Now, the halos will only be available to the characters that placed on the leaderboard to show your prestige and accomplishments within D4 and the leaderboards themselves. Now, the tower itself is getting improvements. The levels themselves are going to be a lot more streamlined, so no more monsters getting stuck behind doorways and corridors like we saw in the PTR, so hopefully this will lead to less fishing in the activity. And they further expanded that the reason they wanted to implement the tower is so that they can do a lot more customization with the pit, and we are seeing that with the Belial seasonal events coming in Season 11. So for example, in the future we might go into a pit which is just a complete boss rush, throwing bosses at you, or maybe one with nothing but loot goblins. I think this is optimistic and a cool change up that we're expecting to see. And speaking of optimism, let's talk a little bit about the itemization. I had some serious concerns when I played the PTR because with the nerfs to masterworking, builds are no longer going to get the amount of cooldown reduction, attack speed, crit, skill ranks, and other modifiers that we came to depend on for masterworking our items. Because masterworking, if you missed the memo, is now only going to improve the base stat of the item. For example, damage on weapons, resistance on jewelry, as well as armor on your armor. The way that Blizzard is compensating for this is that now you'll be able to find some of these stats on rings and gloves, such as cooldown reduction. So that adds additional customizations to the items, and this is important since legendaries will now have 4 affixes instead of the 3 we have now on live in Season 10, putting them on par with how many affixes you find on unique items. Also, the new seasonal mechanic, Sanctification, modifies your item once you've already fully tempered and masterworked it. And some of these modifiers included replacing an affix with another aspect on your item, so your item could have 2 aspects, and also some cool new affixes that we haven't seen before, such as multiplicative damage to certain elemental types. Now, there is a concern that Sanctification could lead to some serious bricking. For example, imagine sanctifying a mythic unique helm like a Shaco and ending up with the indestructible sanctification stat replacing your cooldown reduction. That would be absolutely devastating. So good news is they are removing the indestructible sanctification rule. Now, during the PTR, we did not see offensive aspects being able to be rolled on sanctification. However, it looks like that was something that was omitted in the PTR, and we should see those in Season 11. Now, in terms of additional power adjustments, one issue that we saw in the PTR is that with the removal of Chaos Armor, masterworking as we know it, as well as no chaos powers, there was a serious drop in player power to the point that the vast majority of builds would not be able to clear a pit 100, which is a problem because we rely on the pit to level our glyphs. So in other words, classes would have a seriously difficult time maxing out their glyphs. Thanks to this feedback, it doesn't look like player power itself will be adjusted. However, the difficulty of the pit is being scaled down, and monster health is being brought down to 60% of their current values. So you're no longer going to spend an eternity on that pit guardian at the end of the tunnel. Also, one big complaint that we did see is that a lot of items like, for example, the new Melted Heart of Selig, which is going to play essentially like Mana Shield did in Season 10, would cap out its bonuses at 500 resource. And that 500 resource was across all different items that benefited off of your max resource. So for example, Ramaladni's Magnus Opus sword, as well as the serpentine aspect from swords, would cap their benefits at 500 resource. Due to mixed feedback and how this could affect the power of different classes, because 500 isn't even for every single class, it could be more detrimental to one class as opposed to the other. This is now uncapped, so I'm very curious to see how that'll impact builds going forward. Now, another concern that we had about the tower and leaderboards, if you look at the unofficial leaderboards today, you can see that a lot of the top players' gears are absolutely perfect in any way, and frankly, unless you're a streamer that's being fed loot by your community, is impossible unless you participate in real money trading. So that was a big concern for players when leaderboards were announced, because there is no solo self-found system. And with gameplay only loot like Chaos Armor no longer being included, then the top people on the leaderboard getting those cosmetic Halo rewards are pretty much all going to be RMT traders or content creators being fed by their community. So Blizzard thankfully listened to us, and they are working on implementing a solo self-found system to help prevent this and have a separate leaderboard for that system. On top of this, specifically hardcore solo self-found players who rank on the leaderboards are going to get their own category unique cosmetics that aren't available in any other mode. Also, another issue is just the character creation slots. See, back in Diablo 3, when a season was over, your character went back to quote-unquote the Eternal Realm. However, you had the ability to rebirth your character and bring them into the new season. This will preserve some of your character's stats, such as playtime, as well as their appearance from the character creation screen. So this will also save you the hassle of having to delete the older characters that you were invested in throughout the different seasons and having to create another one from scratch. Another great quality of life change is that going forward, when you do create a seasonal character, your waypoints and map progress will be inherited from the Eternal Realm. So no more having to recollect certain waypoints and rediscover areas in the map going forward. They will be unlocked from the start. Now, beyond Season 11, the developers were a little bit hush-hush about what's coming next, completely dodging questions about the cow level and the Paladin, almost ignoring the fact that those two have ever existed in previous games. However, Zaven, who is the associate director of expansion, says that all Diablo fans should tune in to the Game Awards, which is set to premiere on December 11th, which is non-coincidentally the same week that Season 11 is going to go live. Does this mean we're going to get an expansion announcement on the Game Awards? I feel like you can safely assume that we'll be seeing something. With that being said, what do you think of these changes, and does this alleviate some of the concerns that you have going to Season 11? And what do you hope to see going forward in the next expansion? Now, coming back to the subject of those StarCraft skins, once we hit 1,500 followers on Twitch, where you can enter for a chance to win a free set of the StarCraft armor skins in Diablo 4, as well as a Zergling mount. And these prizes were provided directly to me by Blizzard Entertainment as a Diablo partner. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please consider liking and subscribing to help supporting the platform. And if you're interested in a community-focused stream where I always help players either speedrun the pits to get you your Paragon and Glyph levels, or running Infernal Hordes, among other activities to farm that Chaos Armor, or you want a great Diablo 4 community to hang out with, be sure to tune in to my streams where I stream 5 days a week. As always, a special thanks to my supporters. Until next time.